This is Evan Talks podcast, where we talk and share our mental health journey every other Monday. Our goal is to break the stigma of mental health and to help people along the way. Subscribe and be a part of this awesome new journey. Hello and welcome to this special episode of Evan Talks. Today is Time to Talk Day, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing. I wanted to give you a quick 15-minute episode on what Time to Talk Day is all about this year and give you 5 of my tips on how to start a conversation and have a conversation about mental health with either somebody you work with or somebody in your personal life. So let's get started. This year in 2021, Time to Talk Day is all about the power of small. A small conversation about mental health has the power to make a big difference. We know that the more conversations we have, the more myths we can bust about mental health and break down those barriers and end stigma around mental health. And that's reality is what I and Evan Talks is all about, is about having those small conversations every other week, starting next week on Evan Talks podcast. So the challenge we've got sometimes is if we've not had any conversations about mental health before and you maybe don't know what the right thing is to say. And what I want to reassure you is that as long as you are honest and caring about somebody, that you're not going to say the wrong thing. You really just need to be logical in your approach, and more often than not, people don't want you to talk. They just want somebody to listen. And by opening up and having an initial conversation or asking somebody how they're doing will make a massive difference to that person. I want to encourage you not to worry about what you're going to say and how to say it. Just be genuine. And if you're being genuine and you're being honest with that person, then the chances are you are going to be able to be helpful and reassure them that what they're going through is okay and you're there for them essentially. So every year in February, Time to Talk Day happens, and like I said at the beginning, this year they're focusing on the power of small and having those small conversations. Let's be honest, as we all know, the last 12 months have been absolutely rubbish and not great for people's mental health. So I think it's more important this year than any other year that we've had that we take some time out on one particular day and have a conversation about time to talk, or about mental health rather, and just make that time to have that conversation. Tip number 1, start small. You might find it intimidating, you might find it difficult, but just be open and honest and genuine with somebody. And if you don't know how to start a conversation, then actually just say, you know what, today I listened to this podcast about time to talk. Have you heard about it? And then that way you can start that conversation and quite easily feel open and comfortable about talking about it, because you can just blame it on me. So yeah, just start like that, or drop somebody a text. I mean, let's be honest, might not be seeing as many people as we would normally see, or be face to face with people. So it might be easier to just drop somebody a text and say, listen, thinking of you today, how you doing? And you don't need to say it's about mental health, but reality is, if you're thinking about somebody and you feel like they might need to talk to somebody, then you dropping them that text message saying, hey, how are you today, will be a great way to start the conversation. Tip number 2 is find a good time and place. Now, what I want to encourage you is that if you're always waiting for the perfect opportunity or the perfect time to have a conversation about mental health, you could be waiting forever, and then it could be too late. It could be the moment is gone, the person's spoken to somebody else, whatever it may be. So don't get too hung up on a good time and place, but if you are having this conversation face to face with somebody, just be mindful of the surroundings that you're choosing to have that conversation. Like we said, in reality, it's not like we're going to be meeting up with people in a coffee shop or something, but we might meet up with somebody for our one allocation of exercise, and that might be a good opportunity. So if you're taking a walk with somebody or if you're going for a light jog, you might be able to say to them, hey, have you heard it's time to talk day? Have you heard about it before? It's all about mental health. Have you had a conversation on time to talk day with anyone? Do you want to talk to me? So it's really easy to kind of start the conversations like that. And that's the power of Time to Talk Day, is it's a national day put aside for talking about mental health. So if you are going to bring it up on any day, today is that perfect day. And I'd really want to encourage you to take the opportunity to at least ask somebody that you maybe haven't heard from for a while, drop them a text, give them a call, or even drop them an email if they're a work colleague and you haven't heard from them for a while. Just ask them, hey, how you doing? Fancy a chat? Fancy a catch up? Whatever it is. Because let's be honest, in the times that we're in right now, just catching up with somebody could make a big difference to their mental health. So that might be all it takes today, is just to catch up with them and tell them you're thinking of them. Tip number 3 is, if you do get into a good conversation, you might feel the need to ask some questions because you may not know what exactly they're going through and how they're going through it. If that is the case, just be mindful of what you're asking. It could be something that they don't feel comfortable sharing, and if that is the case and they say, oh, I don't actually feel comfortable telling you that much or something like that, then just respect that and step away and say, okay, fine, I was just curious, I just wanted to know a little bit more. But in the same breath, if they aren't looking for suggestions, then don't feel that you have to problem solve. That's one of the big things we learn as mental health first aiders is you don't need to problem solve. Often people just need to talk and offload, and whilst that is good for them, it might be a bit more challenging for you because if somebody's constantly offloading on you, you might need to offload on somebody else. Just bear that in mind that you don't need to give advice. They're not necessarily speaking to you and opening up because they want you to problem solve. And if they do, then they're probably going to ask for your advice and say, hey, what's your opinion on this? Do you think there's anything I can do? Anything like that. I mean, it does get to me that some people might think that mental health conversation or conversations about somebody's mental health is different to what a normal conversation would be, but it's really not. It's really just having a normal conversation as you would with a mate. It's just maybe listening a little bit more and letting them open up a little bit more than they might normally with you. Yeah, just if you are going to ask questions, just be cautious of what questions you're asking, remembering that unless you say something really out of left field, the chances are you're not going to offend them. You're not going to make it worse. That's the other thing that a lot of people worry about. You're going to make it worse. If your heart's in the right place and you're being genuine and sincere, you're not going to make it worse. So just ask questions, but just be mindful of how those questions come across and maybe be a bit more gentle with how you ask those questions. Right, tip number 4 is be open. Now, if you are expecting somebody to be open and honest with you and you're asking them to open up, or if they're feeling like they want to open up but they're not sure, then you open up and maybe reassure them that, hey, you've been not necessarily in the same place, because I don't believe any of us are necessarily in the same place when it comes to mental health. We're all on a very different journey. So it's important not to say, oh yeah, this is what happened to me, because again, that could become quite frustrating. They don't need you to necessarily reassure them that you've been in the same place. They just want to know it's okay to be where they are and to speak to you and find ways out of it. So just being open is good. It helps to establish some sort of trust, but being mindful that if somebody's being open and honest with you, that they are giving you an element of trust. So don't abuse that trust by sharing it with loads of different people and telling them all about what they've told you and everything like that. You know, it's important that they can feel safe and open and honest with you, because you're not going to go around telling everyone about them. And tip number 5 is treat them the same. So if you're having that conversation with somebody, don't treat them differently the next day if they tell you something that you didn't necessarily know about them, or they didn't feel comfortable telling you about before. it's really important that you actually treat them exactly the same. And I must say that last year when I did this podcast, I was worried about how other people were going to react and treat me. I mean, I wasn't overly concerned about it because I've had such good experiences in the past where employers, managers, friends, people I lived with, none of them treated me differently after hearing what I go through, and even after some of them seeing me at my worst and seeing me depressed and not very well, none of them treated me differently after that. I mean, maybe they could have been a bit more gentle with me and let me get away with things that I wouldn't normally get away with. Not necessarily in the workplace, but definitely my family would let me get away with a little bit more, especially after my latest episode or my last episode. They would let me maybe give me a little bit more space. But that quickly disappears, and it's very important to remember that. So if somebody is having a conversation with you about how they are feeling or what they're feeling, then don't treat them differently the next day. Text them, give them a call, follow up the next day and just say, hey, I really enjoyed our conversation yesterday. I just wanted to check you're feeling better after talking. And there's a very good chance they're going to say, actually, yes, I'm feeling much better. Thank you for listening. But don't treat them differently. That's the worst thing, is when somebody starts treating you differently or maybe stops talking to you altogether. I've had a few of those incidents happen where people I've spoken to about my mental health have stopped talking to me. I've actually had a few people who I was potentially going to be in relationships with treat me differently after hearing about my mental health problems or journey or issues, whatever you want to call it. So don't be that guy or girl. Don't be that guy. Don't treat somebody differently because they've trusted you enough to open up and tell you something that's very, very personal to them and very emotional to them. Because talking about depression or mental health can often lead to you feeling that way. I know for me, it's sometimes quite draining having the podcast and that's why I took a break, because constantly talking about mental health kind of makes me reflect a lot more on my own journey and makes it a little bit harder for me to carry on and get better. Yeah, don't treat them differently, treat them the same. So those were my 5 top tips for Time to Talk Day and how to have a conversation with somebody. If you are somebody who is going through something right now, what I want you to do is flip it on its head, really. So flip those 5 tips right upside down and listen to them too. So for you, again, start small. So don't feel like you need to tell somebody everything about what's going on. If you don't feel confident, test the waters and just ask them, have you ever spoken to anyone about mental health? Do you know much about mental health? Today's Time to Talk Day. I was just curious. So maybe don't lead by starting your story. Similar, if you don't feel comfortable doing it face to face, then do it over a text or a phone call or whatever makes you feel comfortable. But the most important thing is to feel comfortable in talking. And again, if somebody's asking you too many questions and you don't feel comfortable answering all those questions, then just be open and honest with them and say, I don't know that I'm in the position right now to share that with you. And if you are being honest with somebody, be completely honest with them. Don't tell them half of how you're feeling, because that could give them the wrong perception of where you're at. And it's important for them to understand where you're at, because otherwise they might panic, overthink it. And then again, treat them the same. Don't be cautious and don't hide away from them if you've been open and honest with them and you're feeling embarrassed the next day, or if you're feeling uncomfortable the next day. Just face that head on and go back and have that conversation with somebody rather than trying to hide away from it. Those are my 5 top tips for anyone on Time to Talk Day, really. Those aren't entirely my own tips, I must be honest. Those are on Time to Talk's website. If you haven't visited, please do and go visit them. I thoroughly enjoy Time to Talk Day because it's a great opportunity for us to really promote mental well-being in the workplace. And so many companies and organizations get behind it. It's great that there's such a media presence around Time to Talk Day. So please, if you're going to do anything today, just have one conversation. Just ask one person how they're doing and then ask them again. And just be just be genuine in doing so. Don't do it because I've told you. Do it because you want to and you believe that people need help, because right now we all do. And just a quick plug, because I think I've got some time. My podcast comes back next week. Evan Talks podcast comes back next week, Monday, and every other Monday for the next 10 Mondays or the next 20 weeks, there's going to be an Evan Talks podcast drop in. I've had some really great people get in contact to join and share their stories or just have a chat to me about mental health and what they think. So if you're one of those people that you haven't reached out to me already, please get in contact. If you search evantalks.com, you'll find my website. You can drop me a message on there. You can email me on there. And yeah, let's get in touch and let's have honest and open conversations about mental health and end this stigma. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy Time to Talk Day, and I will speak to you next week. Thank you for listening to Evan Talks. And if you'd like to know any other information about Evan Talks, or you would like to get involved, please check out evan-talks.com for more information.